Good evening, it's nice to be with you. First, 12 million passengers a year could be flying from Bristol Airport after campaigners lost a High Court appeal against its expansion. They'd opposed it on environmental grounds, but their claims were dismissed by a top judge. Our business correspondent, Dave Harvey, reports.
Outside Bristol's civil courthouse, climate campaigners gathered for a verdict.
With great sadness, I have to announce that the judge has rejected our challenge.
Shame! 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 Shame!
There were speeches and songs, and drama too, representing the human cost of climate change. Today they lost their case in court, but they will not give up their fight.
We hope that the world will catch up with the reality that expanding airports, it's madness in a climate emergency. That's what we hope. And if that does happen, then the law will change. Airports will not be allowed to expand until they can be truly carbon neutral.
There is no doubt that more planes means more carbon and so more climate change. In fact, the High Court judge himself agreed with that in his judgment today. But government planning inspectors said that's not a matter for a local planning decision taken by local councillors. No, it should be left to national government. And that's what all these protesters came here in Bristol to the High Court to challenge, arguing climate change matters to everybody. But today, they've lost that legal argument. So what next?
This isn't going to be the end. We are hoping and planning to appeal this decision. The trouble is that national government haven't considered this application at all. Michael Gove has refused to consider it, and what that means effectively is that nobody is looking at the carbon emissions from the extra planes. Absolutely nobody. And that is crazy.
We say no!
Meanwhile, at the airport, these plans now come much closer to reality. A larger terminal building, a new bus station, improvements to the A38 and new destinations around the world. And they have green plans of their own too.
You've made a lot of your plans to be carbon neutral as an airport. That's the terminal buildings and everything that happens on the ground. But if you're getting thousands more flights up in the sky, that kind of makes a nonsense of it, doesn't it?
Well, we've set a target to be net zero for our own operations by 2030, and we're working with the industry to achieve that same objective by 2050. And that will involve a new generation of aircraft, and the Southwest has got a unique role to deliver that technology. But in the meantime, we're working with our airlines to get the cleanest, most modern aircraft operating out of Bristol Airport. And I'm pleased to say in 2023, we'll see more of those aircraft than we have ever before.
Dave Harvey, BBC Points West at Bristol Airport.
Well, more than 6 other airports which want to expand have been waiting for today's decision. Our political editor, Paul Beltrop, is here. Paul, where does this leave the government's green agenda?
Well, the government still say they are committed to net zero, reducing our emissions down to zero by 2050 to tackle climate change. But they're pinning their hopes very much on, well, new technology, emission-free passenger planes. I caught up with Somerset MP and Environment Minister Rebecca Powell.
Bristol Airport can itself be a net zero airport. Emissions can be offset, but equally it's with technology, it's with our own research and development.
That's decades away, isn't it?
It's not decades away, and it relates to all of the things that I'm involved with, linked to air pollution and air quality and emissions, and that's why it's really important to have a trajectory, to have a plan and have targets.
Now, those plans were set out 6 months ago in what they call their Jet Zero strategy. Now, here's some lines from it. We will continue to support sustainable airport growth, say the government, while admitting that decarbonising aviation will be a challenge. Contrast that with what their own expert advisors, the Committee on Climate Change, are saying. They warn that zero or low emission flying has significant risks, and they recommend there should be no net expansion of airport capacity. One of their members I've been talking to today was fairly blunt.
The Jet Zero pathway the government has set out really isn't going to deliver on the net zero ambition. There should be no airport expansion. and this includes both the terminal and the kind of runway capacity, particularly when we're in the situation when actually every airport in the country is wanting to expand.
Well, Paul, we now know that an objection from the local council on environmental grounds doesn't necessarily count for much. So where does that leave other airports also wanting to expand?
Well, they were watching this case closely. They will want to press ahead. Airlines are hoping to get their business back after COVID, which did set them back, but they're hoping to see passenger numbers return to pre-COVID levels this summer. The big challenge is for the aerospace sector and that new technology. Now, take a look at these pictures. This was in Wiltshire at Boscombe Down last November, where Rolls-Royce were carrying out trials of an aircraft engine powered by hydrogen. Now, this is a very small first step. There is an awful long way to go, but ultimately that is what the government are pinning their hopes on.
Okay, Paul, thanks very much indeed for that. Thank you.